Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Today, I am so thrilled to welcome hero Ophira back to the show. We've covered so much about the power of astrology and how we can use it as a tool to get curious about ourselves and see our motives, behaviors, and more from new and unbiased vantage points. We've also shared Ophira's very own IAM framework and new book explaining the 3 archetypes. And most recently, even how to use your horoscope to your advantage. So I'm thrilled to share that today we're going deep on retrogrades as an often misunderstood topic that can offer incredible opportunities for growth, transformation, and reflection. This is a very timely conversation because whether you know it or not, we are in a highly dynamic month with several significant events occurring astrologically throughout March and the early part of April 2025. Both Venus and Mercury are retrograde this month, coupled with a total lunar eclipse, a partial solar eclipse, and 4 key moon phases. Thank you, ChatGPT. However, what you'll learn in this conversation can be applied to any retrograde movements and phases in the future. And so you'll want to tune in to learn how you can reframe these moments in time and use this sometimes challenging energy to your advantage. Understanding these celestial events can offer profound opportunities for growth. So we want to make sure you're equipped to navigate them as seamlessly as possible. We'll get into this and so much more with Ophira today. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about her work for any new listeners joining us. As the resident astrologer for ELLE and the author of over 20 books, Ophira is a private advisor to a roster of CEOs, celebrities, global leaders, and successful entrepreneurs. On TV, she's appeared as a guest expert for a multitude of outlets and created the first streaming reality TV dating show based on astrology, Cosmic Love, on Amazon Prime Video. Her productivity training has been shared at companies like Nike and Saks Fifth Avenue, and her new book, The Astrology Advantage, which is incredible. I highly recommend you check it out, from Simon & Schuster, was just released in August. Ophira, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait for today's conversation.
Let's get retrograde.
I love it. To kick off today's conversation, as I always do with our heroes, I like to start by giving a quick overview of what you do for any new listeners who maybe missed our past conversations together. Can you quickly explain what astrology is to someone who might be less familiar with it and why people seek your guidance?
Absolutely. So astrology, as I do it, astrology is the study of the positions of the planets and stars in relation to us on Earth, and also your cosmic code that you come with. So at your moment of birth, all the planets were in a specific arrangement that only happens one time ever. It can change even a minute later. And so that actually is the instruction manual that they say humans don't come with, but we actually do. So it's a map of your soul, your life's purpose, your mission, and it's a guiding GPS to how to navigate life on this planet here.
That was so succinct and really incredible. I actually don't know that I've heard you even describe it in that way, certainly as an instruction manual, but this concept of like, it can change in a moment's notice and it will never be exactly the same again is a very cool thing to think about your birth chart being so unique and distinct to you. Because I think with astrology, we know the zodiac signs. You're like, I'm an Aries, right? Like there's so many other Aries out there, but your birth chart, to know that that's just kind of like a fingerprint is so cool.
Exactly. That's a really great, that's an even more succinct way of putting it. It is like your soul's fingerprint. And, I'm an identical twin born 4 minutes apart from my sister. And even our charts have a slight, it's like you think of a clock as always ticking, the little second hand. So we have a slight difference in ours that has impacted our friendships, the people we've dated, our creativity, that sort of thing. And it's just fascinating how unique people really are.
So I'm really excited to get into this topic. I have to say, I've always had an interest in astrology and horoscopes and birth charts. And of course, now your IAM framework, which I'm obsessed with. But what exactly is a retrograde and why do they have such a reputation for disruption?
Yeah. It is a word that people may not know exactly what it means, but when they hear it, it strikes fear into their cosmic hearts because they know that Mercury was retrograde one time when they dropped their iPhone in the toilet or,
True story.
Yes. For many people I've heard during that time, or just something electrical just suddenly stopped working, for example. So the lived experience of astrology is what actually makes people, whether they believe it or not, I always say you don't have to believe in anything. It's not a belief system. But when you have a lived experience of something, you go, all right, something's going on there with the energies. And why wouldn't the planet's energies impact us? So the best analogy I make for a retrograde is if it's like two cars traveling at opposite speeds. Have you ever been in like a car or a train or on a bus and you pass each other and one of them appears to be going backwards?
Yes.
So that's what happens. So with astrology, we actually are measuring when a planet passes the Earth in its orbit around the sun, then it appears that that planet is going backwards because the planets move at different speeds. So that period of time, because we measure astrology, we measure the movement of the planets from our view on Earth. So it would look like they were moving backwards. And that's how we measure them degree by degree. So that would be a retrograde period. So Mercury moves the fastest because it's closest to the sun. So that one, those retrograde periods last about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 times a year. Venus retrograde is every 18 months, and that is for 6 weeks' time. Mars retrograde, which we just finished at this recording a couple weeks ago, that was from December 6, 2024 to February 23rd, 2025. And Mars is, about 2 months of retrograde. And, different planets are called, this is an ancient thing, but they call Saturn and Mars malefics and Venus and Jupiter benefics. So a Venus retrograde, while it can mess things up, like Mars retrograde can be really harsh. In the beginning of 2025, the first 6 weeks were under Mars retrograde. It has been one hell of a year. So
I got a concussion as soon as it hit.
Oh
so
my God, that's right.
There you go.
That's right.
First 6 weeks of 25, I was bedridden, basically. Not that long. It was like 10 days, but I was definitely forced to slow down those first 6 weeks of the year. And not what I had wanted to happen either going into 2025 because there was a lot going on. But
oh my gosh. And Mars is the ruler of Aries, and Aries rules the head, and Mars actually rules accidents too. So
oh my God. Guys, astrology,
crazy, right?
This is why, right here. This is why.
Right. I know. It's like, I did not set out to be an astrologer. I went to the University of Michigan. I almost was an engineer. I was always strong in math and science. That is not the profile of the person that you think would become an astrologer, but there actually is no profile. It's a tool. And it's crazy. So during retrograde periods, you want to be careful in the area that planet rules. Case in point, Mars. Mars is speed and haste. It's very directional. Mars is the warrior. So we need to slow down. We need to think before we act. And so people can become more accident prone just by going at their normal pace. Venus rules love and harmony. We always see celebrity breakups during a Venus retrograde, for example, or relationships are tested. But it doesn't have to be bad. a retrograde, you just have to, it's like driving through a school speed zone. You got to slow down because there's children crossing here. So if you slow down, retrograde has a prefix RE. So all RE going backwards, as the planet's going quote unquote backwards, you also want to review something. And, like if it's Venus retrograde, do a relationship review. If it's Mercury retrograde, which rules information and travel and data and communication, work on your relationships, communication dynamics. Maybe go visit a place you used to love or, prepare and protect.
Love that. Okay, that's really good advice. I was going to say, knowing that they do have a little bit of a negative reputation, how can we reframe retrogrades as opportunities for growth instead of these periods where we see major setback?
Yeah. I mean, you will experience bumps in the road, but yeah, you want to take a growth mindset and go, all right, where have I maybe not finished something? It's advisable by astrologers during a retrograde that rather than rushing into something new or signing a contract or moving forward, that you conduct a little more due diligence or go find where there might be cracks in the foundation. Where do I need to tighten this up? Where do I need to strengthen things? Where can I think of them as review periods, I would think.
Okay. So I have to ask, and of course, this won't hold true if you're listening to this episode months and months from now, but right now we happen to be in a highly focused retrograde period in March of 2025. Like, using what you just said, like, how are some ways we could reframe the retrogrades we're experiencing right now?
Yeah, well, that brings up a good point. So the planets are divided into what are called the inner planets and the outer planets. The inner planets, or the personal planets, are the ones that are closest to the sun. And that's Mercury, Venus, and Mars. So because they affect our day-to-day lives, they stay in a sign for, 3 weeks to 2 months at a time. So we're more impacted by their movements. But Jupiter takes a year through a whole sign. Saturn takes 2.5 years. Uranus 7 or 8, and so on. So those are called the outer planets. And the outer planets all go retrograde for 4 to 5 months of the year. So there's very rarely a period where there isn't at least one retrograde. It'll be maybe for like a month or 2 months max. But we don't feel those as much. Like the retrogrades of the outer planets are actually sometimes a little relieving because it's like a chance to integrate how they're changing our lives in this big, more macro, long-term way. But the inner planets, when they go retrograde, that's where I think we need more of the survival skills that you're talking about.
Okay, that's really helpful context as we think about like how to break down the retrogrades, inner versus outer planets.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's really helpful to think about like the difference, and that the outer planets going into a retrograde can be a bit of a relief where we feel the inner ones a lot more heavily.
That was a lot. But to answer your question about March is unusual because we have 2 personal planets, Venus and Mercury, both retrograde, and 2 eclipses. So eclipses are supercharged new and full moons. And in astrology, there are times when we're kind of forced to make changes. We tend to, as humans, put off change and decisions for as long as we can. It's human nature. We want to stay comfortable. We have loss aversion where we we fear what we'll lose more than what we'll gain by making a change, and, sometimes minimize the downside of making change and then end up losing more by staying stuck where we are. So eclipses come along to help with that and push us off the fence. Unfortunately, these are coming in a retrograde period when we're getting a little bit of a mixed message. How 2025 is that from the planets that make the change. Wait, don't. It's a retrograde. So, and sometimes that's what that's just what they're doing, and it all happen at the same time. So we kind of have to deal with this chaotic double message.
Fun. That's a great.
Thanks, March.
Exciting. Yeah. Thank you, March. I'm just curious, how do you work with this energy in your own life? How do you handle and navigate retrogrades for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, with a lot of mindfulness and attention and listening. And I think that's a good practice at any time, but it's like, what do I want and what is wanted from me right now? So as an astrologer, I'm able to look at my personal chart. So one of the things you can do if you ever get an astrology reading, or we have right now it's a once-a-year course called Become Your Own Astrologer, but we're hoping next year to make it accessible on a more ongoing basis for people. But we teach people how to read birth charts. So what they learn is how to look at their chart. Your chart is a static, never changing moment in time, and compare it to the moving planets. That's where you really can become an oracle in your life and say, all right now kind of sucks. So maybe I won't try to move that project forward, but I could look ahead and see when a better time would be. It's like, should I go to the beach when it's going to be 60 degrees in California, or when it's going to be 85 degrees in California? It's kind of like, like that. Like, I could, but I won't get to swim, or should I go to the islands during hurricane season? Maybe not. Doesn't mean there's going to be a hurricane, but maybe I won't. So that looking at your chart is really the same way. And a retrograde is kind of like a hurricane season. March is a little bit of a hurricane season. Yeah.
That's so beautifully explained and makes it very clear, very clear. And I love that analogy. Thank you. Are there particular retrogrades that are more focused on personal healing versus external challenges?
I think retrogrades reveal where external challenges exist that we haven't been paying attention to. They force us to look at something a corner we've cut, a conversation we've avoided, things that we think we can brush aside. You can't build and grow on top of a shaky foundation. So retrogrades and eclipses will expose where we may have skipped a step and invite us to go back. So while it might feel like a little bit of a curse at first, it can be a real hidden blessing. So if you accept the assignment of a retrograde as like, I'm going to be brave and go back and look at where I'm out of alignment, think of it as like a cosmic chiropractic adjustment, then you can emerge from that time so much stronger to go forward.
I love that. Thank you for sharing those words of wisdom. And it's like, I'm having an aha moment right now, which, I'll get into in a little bit because I need, more thought. But like, this is really good. This is really good. It's definitely
you had
making
a concussion. Like, what was the hidden gift of that? Even though I'm sure it sucked so hard, especially because there was so much for your brain to have to process going on in the world. Although maybe the gift was that you could prioritize. But yeah, like,
if you want to know the truth, I'm going to go really deep for a second. I am pretty confident I haven't fully processed my dad's passing.
Oh, no
doubt. With him, passing away at the end of last year, I think he represented a lot of safety when I was younger because he helped end the abuse when I was a child. And so I think there's a lot mixed up in that relationship and how he was my sense of safety in many ways. And now that he's gone, I think I was doing, and I wasn't sleeping at all. I had insomnia for those 4 months. And then I hurt myself because it was sort of, I think the universe is God's way of just telling me to stop and sit and try to process everything that had happened, which I sort of did, but I still feel like, and I mean, I did. I went in walks in nature. I was forced to stay in bed, but like, I just know there's stuff that I tried to distract myself from, I think, in the latter part of last year. And I'm feeling like right now very ready to expel anything that's in my physical tissue that I have not felt yet. It's weird. I really believe that your emotions manifest in physical ways. And I've had this like weird knee. I've had the concussion. My stomach stuff has started acting up a little bit again. And I just I know there's something there. And so I'm actually relieved to hear you say that this is a good season to maybe get a little bit more curious and spend time unearthing what might be there that I'm not paying attention to, because I've felt that pull since the beginning of the year, but I am struggling to figure out how to take the first step. So to know that the planets are supporting me in making some of those changes and asking some tough questions is actually reassuring. It's really reassuring. So more than you probably needed to know.
No,
but
please, not at all. No,
if
this
I'm
is
being
what
honest.
I love about astrology is like it sets the table to be able to have those kinds of insights and conversations. Like, and the body does keep the score. The mind, body, and spirit are connected. I've been listening to a lot of Dolores Cannon. She has a great book called The 3 Waves of Volunteers, where she hypnotized people to like regress into past lives when they were in and out of bodies. And I was just listening to it this morning, and she was talking about like what happens when our souls come into a physical body and how much density it is. And it's how it's one of the hardest assignments for the soul to be human. And I literally, she asked the person who was under hypnosis about their astrological chart. And that person literally said, it is a moment where it's your assignment, basically, that you get. So here you're saying, like, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to move forward or which step to take. And I heard you mention your knee. So there we go. And I'm sure I could find something in your chart that's happening in the planets that would correlate with that. So it's when an astrologer does a reading with someone, this is exactly the flow the reading would take. Like, we would start to talk about this, you'd have an insight and say something, then I'd look at it in the chart and I would be able to say, oh, maybe the next step for you to take is this, or maybe at this point in time would be good for you to do this. And so the person will get a sense of relief like you did, of going, I don't have to boil the ocean. I lost my father, my protector. It's all wound up in trauma that will take me the rest of my life to process because of what it was. There's always another layer. So naturally, I probably had a fight or flight response. And, it's the layers to start to reveal themselves that way. And it's so moving to me because, like, you literally are like, oh my God, I feel 1,000 pounds lighter just from seeing there's some kind of divine pattern here,
Yeah, no, I do. I thank you for using that and bringing that to life for everybody, because I don't believe people think about astrology in their birth chart in that way.
They don't.
I really don't.
They think it's like a fun, fluffy thing. And it can be. The thing about astrology is, like, astrology and horoscopes are two different things. I think we talked about this. The horoscope can be fun, but it's also, it's not always used to give the person agency. It's like, here's what I see. And then sometimes it can scare people because they're like, oh no, that wasn't what I had planned. And astrology is like, you have as much access to this as I do. I might know how to read these symbols, but your soul is in charge. Your intuition knows. You have an inner knowing of what's right. And we all do. And when we betray that, we also know. So your body is telling you what you heard to slow down and process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the retrograde is your invitation to do that now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to use it to my advantage. And actually, we're going on spring break for a couple weeks so I can step away and kind of get out of my normal surroundings. And hopefully maybe that'll provide new perspective that hadn't occurred to me or I hadn't experienced yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
What's even better about that, and almost too good to be like, what, is that for almost all of March, Venus and Mercury's retrogrades are in Aries, in your sign.
What?
Yeah.
My mind. It's too much. It's too much.
Like, which came first, the chicken or the chart? I don't know,
I love it. I love it.
So
it's my month, guys. March.
And then you have your birthday, which, we should do an episode on the solar return chart, which is your birthday chart. Like, you get a different chart depending on what time zone you're in. So I think you're going to be in another state. We should do a solar return birthday chart for you, and I can explain that in another episode.
I mean, I'm putting that in our parking lot of ideas. I love that.
Yeah. The retrograde, I mean, I think you are going to come back from this retrograde. Sure, there'll be maybe some annoying factors that you've had to deal with, like all of us, but
Mm-hmm.
you could come back truly zen and transformed with inner peace from things that you couldn't see at that layer of depth because everything was moving too quickly. So this beautiful pause opportunity for you will make you wiser and maybe more grounded too.
Thanks for that, Ophira. I'm now even more looking forward to my spring travels with the fam.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'll have to steal away some moments of solitude.
Yeah, definitely bring a journal for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, that's a really good call. You know, I love to journal. So
Yeah, make that like a non-negotiable thing. And you know what? With Venus
Okay.
and Mercury retrograde in your sign, assertiveness and personal boundaries could be challenged. So really, this is an invitation to tell your family ahead of time. I'm going to take a little bit of, me time every day. So will you support me in that? Let's make a game out of finding mom the prettiest place where she can have 30 minutes of quiet or something like get them in on it instead of like making it a battle. Like, oh God, I can't do this because my family. It's like have them champion that for you.
Oh, I love that, Ophira. Thank you for suggesting that. And I am sure they can get on board with that because
Totally.
they love Happy Mom. She's so much more patient and fun. And yes, that's great. No, thank you for that. I am actually going to take you up on exactly what you're saying. I'm going to bring the journal. I'm going to make it a game and I'm going to find time every day to just write and reflect and try to process whatever might still be stuck there, because I do feel like there is an energy supporting that right now.
Okay. Well, my book recommendation is Dolores Cannon's Between Death and Life.
Okay.
She was an Aries, incredible woman.
Love it.
And it will give you a lot of peace about your dad and knowing he's around, and maybe try to see if you can get a message from him when you journal. Just ask him to write, do automatic writing. Ask him to come through your writing.
I will totally do that.
What do I need to know? And then just write.
Love that.
When was your dad's birthday?
October 6th.
Libra. My daughter's a Libra, October 3rd.
Oh, they're so close.
They're such good dads.
Yeah, he was
so
great.
Kind, loving dads.
Yes, he was really there. Yeah, that's great. I love that prompt too. I mean, Lee, I know Lee, Hero Lee, the psychic medium in the group, would be fully supportive. I actually am now at my point where I could do a reading with her, but I haven't quite decided. I'm going to wait on that one. Because you have to wait 3 months until after the loved one has passed before she'll do a reading.
Oh, really? I'm like the kind of person that's like on it the next day. I'm like, they're still like in between, but I need to talk to them now. So
let's get this done.
Pets, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so I look forward to that session, but I love what you're suggesting and just starting with a prompt and calling him in and seeing what comes. So
yeah, he's there anyway. It's just more like, just he needs a different way to talk to you. So that's all.
Lee says all the time, like, they are better than okay. Like, I totally believe that he is fine. It's more of like, there's just something, I don't know, there's a lot wrapped up in it and I just haven't processed it all,
Knowing and feeling are two. It's not an intellectual thing. You are good
I'm
with
all about that.
Yeah, you're Aries or Virgo. You've got that down cold. It's the cellular, emotional, physical, because your body was in a safe place. So, and the emotions live in the body. So if you're supposed to heal by feeling, then you have to re-traumatize yourself by connecting to your body in order to do that. So of course you got stuck.
So Ophira, knowing that, what are some ways that listeners can work with the energy of retrogrades rather than resisting them?
I think knowing that one is coming and preparing in advance is a really good idea too. Like the soon, and we have our yearly books and guides where people can get the entire year mapped out. Of course, you can find that on the internet too, but we have it all mapped out and explained. So if you know in January that Venus is going retrograde in March, you can, and that might impact your relationships with people or the harmony of your bonds. You can already I'm going to do some prevention. Just winter is coming, so you better boost up your immune system. So making your plans, like, okay, maybe Mercury retrograde, I'm going to be traveling. Well, that is when I'm traveling. I can't cancel travel, but I will triple check that everyone's passport is up to date, or I'll make sure I don't over plan the schedule. So as far ahead of what's called a transit, anytime a planet moves, we call it a transit, whether it's backwards or forwards. Yeah, getting ahead and planning is really the way to go. Of course, you can only plan so much. They surprise us sometimes too, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as Ben Franklin said.
Love it. I love it. Okay, well, now people know what they're trying to get prepared for and how to kind of get that heads up that these types of moments in time are coming. Yeah. So that's really helpful. Finally, Ophira, what are some retrograde rituals or practices that can help us move through these periods with more ease?
One that I really like is a forgiveness exercise that I did by accident once and found that it really worked. So when I was younger and had one of my many breakups, as we all do in our 20s, I would try to write an angry letter and burn it, or write a forgiveness letter to the person. And it just never really worked. But I did notice during retrogrades, we'll find where we're stuck in anger or sadness or grief or some emotional state that isn't empowering us. There's a difference between being stuck in it and processing it. So a ritual I like to do is writing a letter to yourself as though it's from the person that you are stuck with. For me, having a lot of Scorpio in my chart, although I'm a Sagittarius, I have like 4 planets in Scorpio, and knowing that, I'm like, ooh, forgiveness is not always my automatic setting beyond a certain point.
I understand.
Mm-hmm. So one piece of learning your astrological chart is to become more forgiving and less judgmental of yourself. That's the invitation. So I said, okay, I'm stuck in this. Let me write a letter to myself as though it's from this guy that broke up with me. That was the moment that started it. I've used it for other situations too. Bad business relationships or friendships that changed or went awry. So just start, dear Ophi, I'm really sorry that it didn't work out between us. I know I told you this, but the truth was blah, blah. I just let it kind of come through me, like however it was, however it wanted to. And I found, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie What the Bleep Do We Know Anyway? It came out in 2005 or 6. It was this whole big thing among my circle of woo people at the time because it was like explaining the neuroscience and the physics behind these spiritual principles and the law of attraction. So anytime that comes out, I'm always eager to please tell me so I can explain this phenomenon that I'm going through without sounding crazy. So I remember there was a part in it that was showing that your mind can't really distinguish between whether the person is really apologizing or not. As long as you have the experience of the neurons firing of oh, they are apologizing to me, you will undergo the process, the emotional process. I think they use the example of people watching athletes racing and their muscles firing as though they were running the race themselves. So it's cool. Pretty crazy. So I have found that even though, I don't forget what happened, and forgiveness is a journey, it's not a one-time thing, I still was lifted from some of the imprisonment of the resentment and hurt that I felt, and able to be okay, this was a human that maybe I've elevated to superhuman status, and I can see them as a fallible human and forgive them a little, forgive myself a little, but just be released from the stuckness. And that's what I think any retrograde ritual that you do. Some people like to burn things. Some people like crystals. Some people like it to be less verbal and written. Some people need to dance it out and activate their right brain and their subconscious less than their left brain in the writing and verbal part. But any ritual that frees you from the grip and allows a releasing. Maybe you need to scream and write. Maybe you do need to write the angry letter, the FU letter first before you can write the other one. I just had happened to have written a lot of those already.
I can't imagine why, having all of those Scorpios there.
Right. Exactly.
Those are great. Thank you so much for sharing those practices. They're very, very helpful to understand, and I think really accessible for anyone to try on their own. So this has been great. Thank you so much, Ophira, for joining us today. I loved hearing more about retrogrades. And now everyone, all of our listeners know their importance, how they can be beneficial, and how to look out for them by subscribing to the Astro Style newsletter so they can have a heads up when these important milestones are coming. Obviously, we share it on our Instagram, our social channels, all of your weekly horoscopes and monthly as well. But go submit your email and you'll get the emails right to your inbox, guys.
Awesome.
And to everyone tuning in, if you liked today's conversation, please share it with friends and don't forget to subscribe. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to get resources, meet the heroes, and share your ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.